Gotta talk about Bonnie Blue again, the adult content creator who was reportedly arrested in Bali. A lot of updates since we brought you this story. A, is there a possibility that her potential criminal case could be falling apart? B, could she be deported by this weekend? And C, we may have just gotten word about who snitched on her, how she was even brought to authorities' attention. There's a lot of updates. We're going to break it all down with international law attorney David Teferi. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, I got to say this real quick. If you're putting things out on social media, if you're in the content creation game, you might be wondering how we're able to put so many clips out there so quickly. Well, I'll tell you, this is a secret. This is something we used. It is called Opus Clip. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it so easy to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip generates B-roll, it reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes, you have perfectly edited clips ready to go for TikTok, Shorts, Reels. Opus Clip is your one-stop shop. And having a tool like Opus Clip means that our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. This is the most powerful tool there is to help you share ideas and edit like a pro. So go to opus.pro/sidebar to create your videos today.
I have not used Bangbus in a month.
All right, so we need to talk about the latest twists in the Bonnie Blue saga out in Bali. Now, you remember the basics. Tia Billinger, 26-year-old British content creator, got arrested last week during a raid. Cops reportedly seized the Bangbus, the condoms, the Viagra, the whole kit. She was apparently looking at up to 15 years in jail under Indonesia's brutal anti-porn laws. It's wild stuff. But here is where the plot has thickened just in the last 48 hours since we covered all this. And it is, by the way, a masterclass in how a legal story can pivot very, very quickly. So first, the supposed snitch who turned Bonnie in, he's apparently talking. According to news.com.au, an expat who helped tip off police has come forward. This person apparently says they literally followed her, quote, gangbang bus around Bali. They told the media that the cops were initially confused, saying, quote, they just couldn't comprehend it. But once it was explained what she was allegedly doing, that she was allegedly, quote, bragging about sleeping with schoolies, and that the footage was going to go worldwide, that is when authorities moved in. Now, what was this snitch's motive? Reputation. Flat out said, Bali is not Thailand. Bali is not the Philippines. We don't want Bonnie Blue's gangbang from Bali being posted and shared around the world. And then Bonnie herself faced the music and smirked. She was pictured walking into an immigration office, smiling. When reporters asked if she'd make more explicit content in Bali, she hit him with this: subscribe and you'll find out. Now, she did say that the bang bus is over, okay? But here is the critical legal update from the Daily Mail as well. Their reporting suggests that this whole potential case might be deflating. Why? So according to their sources, Bonnie Blue and the 3 other men that were arrested are now telling investigators they weren't making pornography at all. They're claiming it was a, quote, entertainment-themed reality program, that it was designed to look spicy for social media, but within the bounds of Indonesian law. And get this, a police spokesperson is quoted as saying, no pornographic activities or acts have been found in the collaborative content. So if it's not porn, what's left? Well, here's where the police chief comes in. So the police chief reportedly said, so far, no pornographic elements have been identified, but there are strong indications of traffic law violations and immigration offenses. Now, the investigation is reportedly focused now on these visa violations, these alleged visa violations. So working on commercial content while on a tourist visa, traffic offenses with the bus apparently being registered one way, but it was painted a different way. And because of all this, the Daily Mail is reporting that a deal may be in the works. So potentially a fine for these lesser infractions, and Bonnie Blue would be deported as early as this weekend instead of going to prison for over a decade. Now, we've gone from an international crime story to what might be just a messy immigration spat. The question is, will the authorities believe this was just a reality show? Is that a real defense? Are they going to throw the book at her anyway? This is a really serious issue. So we want to reset real quick. You've probably seen Bonnie Blue online. By the way, in case you don't know, this is who we're talking about.
I'm the girl that rage baits, the one that takes your son's virginity and has no issue making your husband cheat.
So yeah, Bonnie Blue, Tia Billinger, 26-year-old British adult content creator known for her very public, very provocative stunts.
But it's so annoying, like I have a shower, makeup, hair, and then it's within minutes, like completely destroyed. I've just been the players, got a very red eye.
And last week, she took that act to Bali, Indonesia. And that is where she was reportedly arrested in a major police raid. Authorities accused her of producing pornography, which is a serious criminal offense in Indonesia, not some minor charge. She was staring down the possibility of 15 years in jail. And that was the massive, scary story as of earlier this week. But since then, this case has taken some incredible turns. We've talked about a snitch coming forward, new reports that the entire prison threat might be falling apart. The latest development is huge. There's more we want to talk about. So for that, let me bring on somebody who we just talked with last time we were breaking this story. Very fast-moving legal twist. International law attorney David Tafuri. David, thank you so much for coming back on to talk about this because there's these new developments. So I want to start with the new video that came out from The Sun. Bonnie Blue arriving for questioning at the immigration office in Bali, and according to the report on the scene, when asked by reporters if she intended to make more explicit content in Bali, she replied, "Subscribe and you'll find out." Feels a little bit like poking the bear.
It does. First of all, you did a great summary of where we are now, but there's still a lot of questions, and the most recent developments raise new questions. The video of her going to the immigration authorities is interesting because she's smiling. She seems happy. She doesn't seem to be someone who is regretful for her actions. She's scantily clad, which again, as we discussed last time, is not really how you're supposed to dress in Bali, because Bali, despite it being a tourist destination, is a very conservative culture, and the locals there are very conservative. Women usually cover themselves, at least their shoulders and their thighs, and she wasn't. And so this wasn't what you would expect her to do if she's getting good defense counsel and legal advice. You would think she would be apologetic. She would try to clear up the misinformation and reassure the Indonesian authorities that she didn't intend to break the law. As you also mentioned, it's not clear if the Indonesian authorities have found any pornographic materials, and that's why maybe their prosecution won't go forward on violation of the pornography law. But you could also expect that it's going to take them some time to look through everything she has. Apparently, they have cards from her video cameras. They have to look through her phone. I don't know if she had a computer that might have been seized as well. So sometimes it takes a little while to find content that is disturbing.
So is it possible this idea of creating a racy, entertainment-themed reality program that was for promotional purposes on social media to get views, to get clicks, that wouldn't be necessarily a violation, that there has to be actual sex acts that are filmed, and would make it worse if it was produced and distributed for commercial purposes? If it's merely making a suggestive stunt, that wouldn't necessarily be a violation of Indonesian law.
That's right. And that seems to be what she is saying. However, she would have to be very clever if that's what happened, because she was simultaneously putting up on social media that she intended to engage in sexual activities with these schoolies that recently graduated, or university students from Australia. And so it's, at least according to her public statements and things that she put on social media, she had the intention of engaging in sexual activities. Also, there's some reporting to suggest that this game that they were filming when they were raided by the police was supposed to result then in sexual activity. It's just that the police came too soon. And maybe she got lucky in that sense, that they were going to engage in some sexual activities and film them, which would violate the law, but they just didn't get there yet, and the police came too early.
Why do you think the police came out and said this? So the police spokesperson saying there was no pornographic activities or acts that have been found in the collaborative content. I mentioned a similar statement from the police chief. Why would they make those statements?
I'm not sure. That doesn't seem very wise, again, because they probably haven't reviewed everything yet, and maybe this police officer is just trying to be very candid, or perhaps the police have gotten the message that this isn't a prosecution they want to go forward with, so they're giving some excuses as to why they will not go forward.
And by the way, as we reported last time, there were like 14 men, I believe all from Australia, who were arrested initially. They were released. They were apparently interviewed, so they were witnesses in this. It seems maybe none of them, even though, I mean, when you look at certain videos, some certain pictures, they had like shirts on their faces. Some of them were shirtless. Maybe they all said they weren't engaging in any actual activity. What happens if I say yet? Maybe they were caught before something happened. I mean, does that matter? Because again, 14 men, this was all a stunt, nothing happened?
Yeah, it's not clear. Apparently, a couple of the men were detained. Some were released and some were detained further. And all of them, as I understand, have had their passports confiscated. So they're not going to be able to travel, leave the island of Bali until they get their passports back or have immigration documents that would enable them to leave Indonesia. And so they could also be facing a prosecution in the future. But if they didn't actually engage in any sexual activity and they didn't engage in distribution of pornographic materials, then they likely would have a strong defense to a prosecution under that law.
What about this? So if this core pornography charge is deflating, there's nothing there, what's left? I mentioned it before. So this idea of immigration issues, vehicle registration issues, the Daily Mail reports that along with statements from her own publicist, it points the investigation in this new direction, immigration violations. Speaking to Newsweek, Bonnie Blue's publicist gave a very specific update saying, all we know is that they have court on Friday, and today they're going to immigration to make another statement. And the publicist went on to detail the conditions, stating they still don't have any of their phones or passports and are still being interrogated daily. And crucially, regarding the charges, the publicist confirmed, quote, immigration officials have multiple charges that they're investigating her on. So let's talk about that. What do you mean? She's being interrogated daily by immigration, not police, right? That's interesting.
Yeah, that suggests maybe they don't have sufficient evidence to charge her with a violation of the pornography laws, but they would like for there to be, some punishment for her behavior. And so they're turning to the immigration laws. One source suggested that what they're looking at is that she was engaging in work activities while on a tourist visa. So she would be violating the terms of her visa if she was actually working and getting paid or bringing in funding as a result of her activities in Indonesia. That could be one problem. You also mentioned the traffic law violations. Bali is not a place that is highly organized in terms of traffic, as someone who's spent a lot of time there. But perhaps that's also a way that they could come up with something that would be less than the pornography charge, but would result in some punishment for her. And also, my guess is if Indonesia wants to diffuse this situation, they'll deport her based on the immigration violations and not give her another visa to return or issue her some warning not to come back to Bali.
What are multiple charges from immigration? Just to be clear, like multiple charges from immigration, not the prosecutor, not the public prosecutor.
Well, it would be the charges that she violated the terms of her visa. I can't think of any other charge that would be credible.
And what about this court date for Friday? What can we expect?
Well, that's curious because if they're going the immigration route, it doesn't seem like she would need to make an appearance in court, or at least not in a criminal court, which is what I understand this appearance is. So that's why I think there is still a possibility that there could be criminal charges, perhaps related to the violations of the pornography law. But again, only if they find content in the next few days that is sufficient evidence that they think they can charge that.
Realistically, you think they're going to try to deport her by this weekend, get her out, and that's the end of the story? It's bringing too much attention to them?
I think that's a possibility. obviously rely so much on tourism, and they don't want to dissuade people from coming to Bali, but they also have to pay attention to the Balinese population, which is very conservative, many of whom are probably agitated by what she was doing and by the news about it. And they want to make sure that she is not treated better than any other person under the eyes of the law in Bali.
How serious are the traffic violations, right? The car was registered under a certain color and then was repainted. It hadn't been taxed in several years. Is that serious in Bali, as far as you know?
I mean, from what I know, Bali seems fairly lax on things like traffic violations, but and I don't think they're normally enforced often. But perhaps that's just a way that they can that they can find to charge her with something less severe than the pornography charges.
I just want to backtrack to something about how this started, because according to this detailed report from news.com.au, this arrest, as I mentioned, was triggered by a tip-off from within the community. And you have this expat in Bali who wished to remain anonymous, came forward as, the snitch. This individual told the outlet that they tracked Bonnie Blue by following the famous Bangbus, right? They described the police's initial reaction saying, "The way we tracked her wasn't particularly complicated. We just followed her through her gangbang bus." But the cops at first, they couldn't even understand what was happening. We had to explain it to them, that there were about 20 guys and Blue. They just couldn't comprehend it. And this person stated that their motivation was very clear, explaining, but once we explained to them that she's driving around in the gangbang bus and that she was bragging about sleeping with schoolies, some of whom were barely legal, and that the footage was going to go worldwide afterwards, they confirmed that the activity was illegal and took action. But Bonnie Blue's Bali gangbang is not where we want to be reputation-wise. Bali is not Thailand. Bali is not the Philippines. The business community doesn't want it. The expat community doesn't want it. And the local community can't even comprehend it. And they added a key point about the evidence, saying, quote, "But prosecuting them is really difficult here, because what the police had to do is catch her in the act with the cameras rolling, and they got there just before." What do you make of these comments, David?
Well, I think that's a really interesting part of this, which is perhaps she just lucked out because the police came too soon. If the police really wanted to catch her in the act, they should have waited until she was engaging in sexual activities that were being recorded that would violate the pornography law. The information about the snitch is a very interesting part of this story, because when I first read about the snitch, I assumed it would be someone who was Balinese, whose societal norms made them offended by what she was doing. But apparently it was an expat. Yet the way the quotes from the expat sound, it's someone who actually lives in Bali, maybe someone who's been in Bali for a long time, cares a lot about the community in Bali, and wants to make sure that the right type of people are coming to Bali. And perhaps that's why this snitch was motivated to do what he or she did. But it's not surprising that someone who was intending to report on her was able to do so easily, because the bus she had, that light blue bus with her name across it, was very conspicuous, very easy to follow. And also because she was putting so much on social media talking about what she was doing, you could match those things together and easily piece together what she was up to.
Interesting you say what she was putting out online, because that's the final piece of the puzzle, the final piece of context that makes this all very surreal. Because just days before her arrest, Bonnie Blue posted what is being called right now as this cringeworthy 7-minute YouTube video. In it, she apparently bragged about her plans, saying, quote, "The official Bangbus is getting ready to make its mark in Surfer's Paradise. Schoolies isn't ready for the Bangbus." And the video then shows her staging a fake visit to the Australian embassy and waving around what appears to be fake official letters about a visa approval, which, by the way, the reason this matters, the reason this is ironic, is because Australia had already banned her. I talked about this, for doing a stunt. Now, she filmed clips of herself flying first class, being swarmed at an airport. There was a very clear Aussie accent heard saying, "Fathers, lock your sons up." And when you look at all of that, and this was all not real. She wasn't going to Australia. This was a promotion of some kind. You think about, David, that social media activity. As I mentioned in our last video, and I'll bring it up here, they said they were seizing her Instagram account. They're looking at her social media activity. When you see something like that, how does that factor into all this?
Well, that's another confusing part of this because I watched that video and like you said, it's all about her going to Australia when in fact she went to Bali. So maybe she's just clever enough that she wanted to put out there a fake story to distract people from what she was really doing. That's the only thing I can assume from that. Or maybe that was just a way to get more viewers, more hits. And because she got so much publicity in Australia the last time she was there, maybe that's why she did that as well.
It's interesting. All right, we'll see what happens. David Tafuri, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.